Under a beautiful sky, a horrible monster was chasing after two adventurers. Even though they activated skills like wind step, lightness of foot, and advance, panic throughout the village. Even the high-ranking elders heard his screams, so loud that they seemed capable of waking the dead. Represents a good challenge. After repelling it, Rob starts running, but the squirrel chases after him. He reaches the edge of a cliff. In this fantasy world, there are no railings. The squirrel, being quite reckless, charges into him, and they both fall. Rot manages to grab onto a branch to stop his fall, while the unfortunate, the squirrel falls into the water. Now Ra has two options. Try to climb back up if he can get a better grip, or simply give up. He thinks about it for a moment. His parents have no idea where he is. 2 days have passed, and soon those 2 days will turn into a week, then a month. Jason will tell them what happened, but will they believe him? He wonders if he will ever see them again. He gains another skill, climbing and deep breathing. The climb was so difficult that even his climbing level increased. As a reward for his quick reaction, his dexterity also improves. But all of this makes something clear to him. The place really wants me to die. Even so, it's unbelievably beautiful. Hassan would have loved to see this. One day, he hopes he can tell Jason and his family everything about this beautiful world. This grants him another rare passive ability, resistance to melancholy, which he acquired by experiencing profound sadness that cuts to the core of his soul. With this skill, he can recover emotionally faster. However, he doesn't want to lose that feeling. No, he doesn't. He doesn't want to recover too quickly, because that sadness is part of what makes him feel alive. He doesn't want to completely numb his pain. Then, if his report was accurate, they were in dire need of Riordan's assistance. However, Riordan pointed out that, based on the boy's description, he appeared to be resistance to melancholy deactivates, but this only intensifies his longing to see his family. Afterward, we see Orntal and Malik resting together, to a beautiful waterfall. Ortal tries to catch fish by moving nimbly, like water, while Malik thinks shooting them would be a better idea. Ortal, he figures there's no rush, since it's a beautiful day and the forest is peaceful, so Malik decides to relax and enjoy the scenery as well. On the other hand, Rob hates this world where every monster is out to kill him. He even feels the need to apologize for taking out his aggression by constantly fighting and leveling up. Level constantly. He's now capable of taking on a level 8 berserker wolf. He's no longer even affected by the gruesome sights. He is accustomed to all of this. When a monster leaps at him, he uses his sword to strike it down. He wonders, what kind of affliction do these monsters have? Will this be some kind of fantasy-based rage? His sword gets stuck in the wolf, so he has to fight with his bare hands. After this fight, he finally reaches level 3 and acquires the hand-to-hand combat skill. Although it sounds strange, he admits that all of this is starting to become fun for him. He has some unspent points, so he thinks about what he should do with them. After considering it, he decides to invest 2 points in vitality, hoping to unlock a new skill when he reaches 30 vitality. His regeneration level also increases, although only by 20%, a percentage that Rap considers it was merely a young human who didn't pose an immediate threat. The old man countered that they had already seen how quickly, somewhat disappointing. However, he obtains the quick thinking skill, which slightly improves his mental speed, although, consuming 3 stamina points per second while active, it becomes mentally exhausting if used for too long. Still, R thinks it will be worth it. He yells for the wolves to come to him, hoping that this time they aren't infected so he can eat them. Then, he arrives at the waterfall, where the elves were trying to fish and relax. Finally seeing other people, Rock is moved to tears. He uses the ability of identification to find out who they are, but we already know them. However, for the elves, seeing a human is a terrifying experience. So, although Rap walks up to them in a friendly manner and says hello, hoping to learn their names, but the elves just run away. He asks them to stop, and they might return, but no one actually does. Rock realizes that he won't be able to talk to anyone today after all. Still, he feels good about having seen them, even if it was from a distance. Depression washes over him as he reflects on how the first people he saw instantly ran away. Wandering through the woods, he hopes to find someone who won't run away, even if it's just a talking wolf. However, no one appears except for the corpses of wolves. Sitting down, Rock thinks about how nice it would be to have a conversation, even if it were with the Spanish Inquisition. He yells at the game system, asking it to grant him humans could level up, and even a young one could become dangerous. They remembered all too vividly the war initiated by humans, known as the War of Skill, that would allow him to increase the volume of his voice. After waiting a while without getting a response, he decides to return to his cave, although he continues. Hungry, he walks away from a wolf and notices other people hiding in the bushes. Suddenly, an arrow flies toward him, and he dodges it. He dodges it easily, but more arrows quickly follow after him. He runs faster, wondering who is attacking him, when one of the arrows hits him in the leg. This is it's not a good outcome for him, and to make matters worse, he sees a warrior coming straight toward him. Rob manages to block the attack with his sword, and he counterattacks, but when he uses his identify skill, he is horrified to see that the enemy is level 48, which is truly terrifying. Still, Rob thinks that maybe he could talk to him, so he says that if the warrior can understand him, he would like to have a conversation. However, in the next moment, he sees a huge bear is approaching. This is definitely not good. When the bear attacks, Rob hits his head against a tree, trying to regain his lucidity. Lucidity to think of a way out of there. The situation looks very bad for Rob. Either he is beaten and devoured by the bear, or the elf defeats and executes him. Execute him. The bear is so scary that he knows it will haunt his nightmares, but if he manages to defeat it, he could gain a lot of experience, maybe even enough to defend against the level 48 guy if necessary. Is he sure that he would level up something he really needs? With that objective in the Six Nations, which erupted from a simple border dispute, the humans' unquenchable thirst for levels knew no bounds, and they were determined to avoid. He flies into a rage again, takes his sword, and plunges it into the bear. As he expected, he gains many levels for performing such a dangerous maneuver, where even the slightest mistake would have meant certain death. This is thanks to his increased dexterity from defeating a far superior enemy, and also his new resistance skill. Rob is definitely becoming stronger. Sometimes, he even feels like he loves that feeling. Maybe it's the only good thing about this place. He adds many points to his stats, increasing his regeneration and gaining a new skill, Life Surge, which allows him to quickly restore 30% of his HP. Those 20 stat points turn out to be very beneficial, but now he wants more. He thinks that Elf tried to take him down, without him doing anything to her, just like everything else in this damned forest. If he gained 4 levels for defeating the bear, he can't help but wonder how many levels he would win by defeating the elf. However, before he can finish his attack, Rap stops. He realizes that he doesn't want to go that far, and he can't let this world get the better of him. He wants to continue being Rap, so he simply turns around and walks away. Now his euphoria from leveling up has subsided, but the loneliness intensifies. Still, he remains in a melancholic state. Rap feels consumed by a deep sense of guilt, wondering what is happening to him. Since he almost eliminated the elf, he wants to believe that he wouldn't have actually done it, but he can't be sure. A great doubt torments him. Suddenly, he sees a huge, repeating that catastrophe at all costs. If not for the united front of elves, merfolk, harpies, dwarves, Heian, and dragon half-breeds, the humans would have hole. Something new that is more reminiscent of a haunted house, or rather, a haunted hole. He feels a strong instinct to turn around. However, he also thinks there might be a portal inside this place. After all, when he was absorbed before, he ended up in a dark and strange location, and this hole looks very similar to that place. He starts to descend, thinking about positive things, like his mother's banana bread or Friday night's bowling with Jessen. These memories comfort him until the ladder he's using breaks, and he starts to fall. This is definitely not good. He arrives at the bottom and, surprisingly, survives the fall. A fall that would undoubtedly have killed him back in level 0. Maybe he's starting to get used to this place. So far, nothing has tried to devour him here, which is a good sign. But then he hears a voice calling out. It sounds like someone is in danger. A hero. Rob walks towards the light he sees ahead. He finds a door and also a seriously injured elf, or at least what remains of him. Seeing the elf in that state reminds Rob of the damage he could have caused today if he hadn't stopped himself. He apologizes, though he's not exactly sure why, but it's evident that if he had continued to act on his impulses, he would have deeply regretted it. Nobody deserves to end up like this. He wonders if he could perform some kind of rite for the elf, bury him, cremate him, or something similar. As he thinks about it, what strikes him most is that he can have a better conversation with conquered all of Atra. But even with the Alliance, they barely managed to stop them. The more the humans fought, the faster they leveled up, driven mad. This dead elf than with any living being in the forest, who are all obsessed with killing him. The elf's corpse appears to have been there for some time, so if it wasn't he who shouted, "Who was it?" Suddenly, Rap feels a presence behind him. He hears a voice telling him not to move, or he'll lose his head. Rob is terrified, but also curious about how that person can speak English. The elf, seeing Menta in that state, believes that Rob is responsible and is seeking revenge. Rob manages to dodge her attack. He wonders why everyone in this world is abnormally strong, a question he would love to have an answer to. The elf grabs him by the neck and demands to know what harm he did to Menta, threatening to kill him if he doesn't respond. Robitar sees the irony. They demand answers while trying to kill him. As the warrior begins to cry, she uses her identification skill on Rob and sees the genuine terror in him. Rob explains that when he arrived, Menta was already injured. The elf named Kira asks him to just leave, and she returns to Menta's body. Rob. He understands that she was the one who called out to him. He considers leaving, but Kira cries, lamenting that it was all her fault and that she should have been more attentive. She looked back, and in an instant, Menta disappeared. She regrets that now no one will scold her for recklessly jumping into fights. Menta was the only person who truly cared about her. She begs someone, anyone, to somehow hear her prayer and return Menta to her, even though she knows it won't happen. Resigned by their addiction to power, those infected were almost impossible to stop until the humans condemned themselves with their final. She decides to take Menta's body home so that his soul can rest in peace. Rob asks if he can help her with that. This only angers Kira, who he insults him, calling him a weak and disgusting creature who can't save anyone. Rob accepts this, saying he understands that everyone there sees him as a monster, and maybe they're right, but he still wants to help her take Menta home. Seeing the sincere honesty in Rob's words, Kira agrees, but she also makes sure he understands that this doesn't mean they're friends. Rob understands perfectly and knows that she is simply allowing him to help her. He introduces himself as Rob, and she introduces herself as Kira. Because of this, Rob acquires a new skill, diplomacy. He is now more competent in the art of negotiation, a skill that, considering his personality, he probably needs more than anything else. As they walk, Rob comments that, "I didn't remember this place being so large." Kira explains that dungeons tend to change over time, or at least that's what she's heard. Rad. He understands that this might also be her first time inside one of these. Kira tells him that dungeons rarely get close to her village thanks to the Otren. Hearing this, Rob wonders if Kira just came in here to take a peek. Kira explains that she wanted to be useful to her village, since they often reminded her of the opposite. This brings back a bitter memory, and she falls silent. Rob tells her that he knows what it's like to feel act of revenge, the cataclysm. Since then, they hadn't seen another human until now. That's why they needed Riordan, who was level 48, and was like an outsider. Kira wonders if this human is genuinely trying to empathize with her. Rob says yes, and sees nothing wrong with that, since she is the first person he's truly encountered in this place. One guy ran away from him, and another tried to kill him. He's felt so alone this week. He even started talking to a stick. Kira reminds him that she tried to attack him too. That's true, Rob admits, but he says they're past that now, or at least that's what he hopes. Kira responds that he should consider their truce on hold until they get out of here. Still, Rob sees it as progress. He didn't expect that. A dungeon would be such an intense experience. Suddenly, he steps on something slimy and wonders, what could this be? Surprised, Kira wonders if Rob is really human. This confuses Rob, so he asks, "What do you mean by that?" Kira explains that, according to the stories from her village, humans are not known precisely for their ability to forgive. They also cannot forget what humans did in the past. Rob doesn't know what she means, so he asks, "What happened?" Kira is surprised by his ignorance and can't believe Rob has no idea. Then Rob explains that he hasn't seen any other humans, only himself. Kira asks if that means he doesn't know anything about the Great Purge, the Cataclysm, or what happened on Zatan. These are terms completely new to Rob. Kira tells him that they are in Zatan. Rob thinks she's referring to the dungeon, but Kira clarifies that it's the name of the entire, known as the Flash in the Dark. Currently, his state was one of melancholy. Kira and Menta were out patrolling, leaving the village. Region. Well, at least now Rob knows the name of this place. Kira finds it very strange and wonders where he comes from. Rob tells her about a place called Earth. Kira has never heard of this city. Rob clarifies that it isn't a city, but a planet, a revelation that shocks her since that information isn't common knowledge in her world. Now she understands why it isn't normal for someone to simply fall out of a portal. Kira understands that Rob grew up in Atra, which is the name of her world. She also understands that Rob has no connection to the humans who once inhabited this place, which gives her some peace of mind. But now she wants to know why Rob entered the dungeon. Rob says it was to face his fears. However, Kira deduces that perhaps he only came to level up, and Rob admits that he did, although he doesn't understand why Kira sounds as if that's a bad thing. Suddenly, Kira stops walking. Rob. He asks why they stopped, and Kira demands to see his stat sheet. It wasn't a request, but an order. Rob, understanding the seriousness, shows his character sheet. He knows his stats might lead her to judge him as weak, but Kira finally sighs in relief. His level of addiction to leveling up is still low. Rob had never realized it before, but now he knows they even have a term for that addictive feeling of addictive to gaining levels. He asks what would happen if he leveled up too much. Kira tells him that she would then reconsider her decision not to kill him. Rob understands. Green to increase their speed, the monster kept catching up. Malik, who was very tired, asked Ortal to slow down. Ortal, an elf, vulnerable, so they needed Riordan to investigate and act before the human advanced any further. Nevertheless, Riordan felt uneasy. After everything, account. Just then, they are attacked by a swarm of ant monsters, but Kira remains focused on their conversation. She asks if he knows that. You can also allocate points to other stats besides vitality. Rob answers that he just wanted to survive, as he was being attacked by too many wolves. Constantly. Not just wolves, but also poisonous hedges and that enormous bear. Kira notices something and tells Rob to be quiet, warning him not to move because a dangerous spider monster is right above him. Rob just wants to be told that there's nothing above him because he definitely feels like there is something there. Kira quickly brushes away a large spider. Rob uses his identify skill and discovers that they are baby dungeon spiders of varying levels. Some are low level, while others are high level. It seems another monster has been added to the list of threats against him. Rob is truly terrified. There is no where to run. Spiders are everywhere. Seeing them up close terrifies him even more. Kira decides to act and says that they will have to fight. Rob doesn't know if it's the best time to say it, but he hates spiders as much as Indiana Jones hates snakes. It's that simple, but with spiders, this is the worst possible scenario for him. Sadly, Kira has no idea who Indiana Jones is. Rob explains to her that he is a character in a movie, one that also has an incredible soundtrack, one of his favorites. He tells her that she should watch it if she gets the chance, although he admits that this is not a good who he had endured and all those they had lost. He doubted himself. The old man assured him that everyone still felt the pain of their history, and that forgetting was not time to talk about movies. Kira apologizes that he is scared, but tells him he'll still have to draw his sword. She can't fight alone against so many monsters. Spiders are everywhere. Although Rab is struggling against his fear, Kira is currently the only one truly fighting. She has knocked down about 20 spiders, but there are still hundreds more. It's practically unstoppable. Her circle of death technique is working quite well, and she dedicates her attacks in memory of Menta. All this chaos leads her to reach level 28, but when she looks around, the human is gone. The spiders took him away, and having so many spiders so close to him was causing him to lose his mind, but he finally manages to fight as well. In fact, he transforms into a beast. Seeing him fight like this makes Kira begin to believe the stories the elders told. However, why Roby? The spiders are endless. No matter how many he eliminates, they keep coming, and they're poisonous, too. Fortunately, his resistance to poison has also increased. Kira fights gracefully while Rap staggers, but at least his poison resistance increases once again. For him, this situation is like hell. The spiders cling to his body, so he starts rolling around on the ground. This grants him a passive ability called Crawler Crusher, crawlers, which he obtains by having eliminated at least 10 significant insects or arachnids, and having felt an intense hatred towards them. Now, he can. It wasn't an option. Furthermore, Riordan was the village's last remaining elite ranger. Despite his reluctance, Riordan understood the inflict 5% additional damage to insects, bugs, arachnids, or any crawling creature that gives him the urge to jump onto a chair. Shout. As Shap continues to fight his fear and defeat more and more spiders, he gains additional rare passive abilities that grant him 50% more damage to crawling creatures and an extra 250% specifically against spiders. He finally reaches level 9, but he still has no idea whether he is off, winning or not, and asks Kita, who doesn't know what to tell him either. The spiders are also crawling around Menta, so Rab heads over to teach them a lesson for disrespecting the dead. He soon reaches level 10, and, thanks to Vital Surge, he begins healing as well. However, Kita points her sword at him and asks if he has overcome his bloodlust, because if he hasn't, she will have to end his suffering. Rab replies that he's not bloodthirsty, but he could certainly use a hot meal. Now that the danger has passed, they can finally leave the dungeon. Outside, they set up a small camp where Rap can finally eat some delicious fish. He could eat it every day. It's so delicious. Kita comments that it's a miracle he survived so much poison and that his leveling euphoria is still only mild. She had hoped that at least it would be moderate. Rob, while enjoying his meal, says he has no idea what that means. He only knows one thing. This fish is the best. Seriousness of the situation, and decided to follow the elder's wishes. Later, we see several elves hiding among bushes, observing the human, Riordan, he has ever tasted in his life. Kita tells him that he can consider it a symbol of her gratitude. She understands that without him, she wouldn't have been able to get Menta out of there. Rock. He also thanks him for rescuing him from what was undoubtedly the worst experience of his life, although he clarifies that it's not saying much, considering that he has also been attacked by monster squirrels in this world. Kira tells him about the infection, explaining that they don't know what magic is behind it, but it has been spreading among the fauna, creating various abominations. At least now, Rab understands why everyone wanted to attack him. Just when Rab is ready to leave this place, Kira tells him that perhaps now is the appropriate time to warn him that everyone in their village wants to see him dead and buried. Rab already knows this, since he had already run into the level 48 lord. Kira explains that, first, they need to clean him up a bit. They can't present him as a crazed vagabond. While, as they walk, Rob asks her how she met her friend. She tells him that she and Menta used to steal bread from the baker and were always getting into trouble, receiving scolding and beatings for it. She didn't have the best childhood, but having Menta was the only good part. He always protected her. Upon hearing this, Rob feels bad. Kira says that the village has its problems, but it's also her home. Everything around is very quiet, so Rob thinks that maybe everyone in town goes to bed early. However, Kira says no, because there isn't even a candlelight to be seen. This isn't good. Something is wrong. Using Windstep, used a skill called Identify, discovering that the human was level 4 and also suffered from melancholy. His loneliness was moderate, and his side, Kira quickly surveys the area and finds that everyone is locked in their houses. She wonders if the infection has also reached in town. She knocks on a door and calls out for Riordan. Riordan comes out and sees Kira. Noticing his leg, Kira asks him, "What happened to your leg?" Riordan tells her that his healing regeneration didn't work properly, but he'll tell her more about it later. For now, it seems she has more important news to share, so he asks her about Menta. Kira delivers the sad news that he didn't make it, and explains that an incipient dungeon had formed in the forest. They entered together to explore it, but they got separated, and by the time she found him, it was already too late. Riordan prays that Lotrin receives Menta into his merciful embrace. Kira also prays that he finds peace under his sacred wings. Riordan asks to be taken to Menta, and on the way, he explains that they were attacked. In the forest near the village, the infection in the animals grows more aggressive with each passing day. Kira realizes this explains the village's confinement, but Riordan is simply relieved that she has returned unharmed. Kira then warns him that she enlisted the help of a human to bring Menta back. Riordan stops short and asks if she knew they were tracking a skilled and dangerous human that very day. Kira explains that without the human's help, they wouldn't have been able to perform Menta's funeral rites, and suggests that if Riordan speaks with him, he'll see he's not a monster. Desire to level up was slight, but he was very hungry. Riordan prepared an arrow, ensuring that his shot would be painless. As he did not want to cause, Riordan agrees to talk, but warns that if he ever senses the human poses any threat to the village, he won't hesitate to act. Draw his sword. Kira understands, but she clarifies something else. The human is not from this world. For his part, Rab is really nervous, because Kira brought the Vostar, Mr. himself, level 48. Kira makes the formal introductions and introduces Riordan, also known as Riordan, to Rob. Rob points out that they have already met before, and Riordan recognizes him as well. Rob is surprised to discover that Riordan can speak English. Riordan explains that they call that language common tongue there. Common. Now Rab understands that Riordan must have understood everything he said before they separated. Riordan confirms this. Talking to Riordan, according to Rob, is like talking to a wall. Still, he extends his hand and says he's glad that they are meeting on better terms this time. Riordan responds with a simple no. Rob, trying to appear more casual, he proposes that they work together, explaining that everything in this world has been incredibly difficult for him. He confesses that he is lost and scared. He admits that he has almost died numerous times, and that trying to understand this world is like trying to solve a crossword puzzle without any clues. He is being completely honest and problem. He asks for help, making it clear that he understands there are problems between humans and elves, but he swears that he doesn't represent a threat. If they aren't going to help him, Rob just wants them to point him towards the nearest human settlement, promising that he will leave immediately. At the very least, the way Rob speaks makes it clear to Riordan. To inflict suffering on the human, he would try to end him quickly with a single shot. Furthermore, he prayed that the gods who watched over humans would welcome him into, that he truly isn't from this world. Rob insists once again that he is definitely not from here. Then Kita tells him that there are no longer any human settlements. Not here, or anywhere else, at least as far as she knows. Rob is the only human left, a revelation that leaves him completely shocked. Then, the elves take him to a cemetery. Rob asks what happened there. Riordan responds that it was a war whose price was never worth the victories obtained. The humans continued to get stronger, leveling up again and again while slaughtering their own kind. Each of those tombstones represents 1,000 dead. Rob asks if he is referring to 1,000 dead humans, but Riordan clarifies that he is talking about elves, killed by humans. Rob simply can't believe that humans did something like that. Riordan adds that human violence was endless. In the end, the elves, draconids, dwarves, mermen, harpies, and Helan united to defeat humanity. At first, they gave it pleasant names like the War of the Six Nations or the Allied Expedition, but when it was all over, no name was more fitting than the Purge. What other term could be used to describe the extinction of an entire people and the loss of more than half of the survivors? Not just soldiers, but civilians as well. What remained was a broken world, torn to shreds. Hearing all of this, Riordan expected Rab to show at least some horrified reaction, but to Rab, it seems unreal, their embrace, and that he would never again darken the lands of Zatan. However, the arrow missed, as the humans swiftly dodged it. Riordan realized, however, he also understands that the humans of his world are not very different. Riordan continues, saying that they didn't just lose their loved ones, but also to themselves. Although they survived, none came out unscathed. He himself spent a decade struggling, even reaching the point where he just wanted to curl up in a corner and die, and all he got was this. Remembering all of this enrages Riordan, who accuses Rab of robbing him of his way of life. Rab attempts to defend himself by saying that he wasn't even there, but Riordan continues to explain that the humans rendered half of his abilities useless as a ranger. He can no longer fight with both hands because of his prosthetic hand. Kira intervenes, saying that's enough and that she can tell him the rest. Rab, surprised that there is more to the story, listens as Riordan insists that he will be the one to recount all the crimes committed against every child that the humans, they were murdered. Once again, Kita stops him, saying that enough is enough for the night and that everyone needs to rest. Riordan takes her advice. Tomorrow will be an important day. Rob wonders what will happen on that day. Riordan explains that he will be presented before the elders to be judged, and after everything he's heard, Rob is certain they won't be kind to him. However, Riordan offers him another option. He can leave the village right now, and never return. He grants him this act of mercy, allowing him to choose his own destiny. Shortly after, Rob wakes up with a start, startled. For a moment, he forgets that he is trapped, that, despite his low level, the human was extremely agile. Then, he launched several more arrows, but the human dodged each one with considerable ease, in a fantasy world. But then he remembers that the elves live in medieval-style mansions. He explores a bit, and finds Kita, who also doesn't. I couldn't sleep. Rob says he couldn't sleep either. Kira invites him to sit down and makes him some tea. She apologizes for the humble state of the place, explaining that it's all her apprentice ranger salary allows her to afford. Rob, however, doesn't feel bad about it. He could easily see himself living there. Kira asks him if he lived like a poor person in his world. Rob explains that he was a college student, so yeah, you could say he did. Once the tea is ready, they serve it, and Kira apologizes again for everything. She can barely imagine what he has been through. Rob tells her not to worry. He hasn't even started to process it yet. Everything will simply be bottled up until one day it explodes in a nervous breakdown. Kira sarcastically comments that sounds very wholesome, or at least he hopes it's sarcasm. Rob understands why she wanted to kill him when they first met. After all, Kira also suffered because of the purge. He didn't fight on the front lines, but he lost friends and family. Menta was the only person he had left. They both wanted to become fellow rangers after they graduated. Kira isn't exactly a fan of humans, but meeting Rob made her realize that not all of them are responsible for the sins of their race. Rob may be human, but it wasn't his war. Still, Rob feels that not everyone in town will think like Kira. Only one struck him in the leg, causing enough pain to stop him in his tracks. Riordan moved in for a close-quarters attack, initiating had hoped they would change their minds upon meeting him, but now it seems like they are climbing a cliff. Rob mentions that he has actually already climbed one, so repeating the feat shouldn't be a problem for him. This sparks Kira's curiosity, and she asks him how high it was, how much he climbed, and what his climbing stats are. Rob notices that Kira is really interested in statistics, which prompts her to ask if Rob dislikes them. Rob replies that he does not. They interest him greatly, as they are the reason he is still alive in this world. Kira then asks him more about the cliff and how he ended up there. Rob explains that he fell from it, which helps Kira understand how he managed to have 50 vitality points at only level 10. Then, Kira asks if Rob has already made his decision. Rob answers that he has. The next day, Rob walks through town with his hood up, looking like a character from Assassin's Creed. This grants him an ability, activates a skill called Stealth, allowing him to go unnoticed at least once. He heads towards the elders, who ask him to remove his hood. Upon seeing their reactions, Rap feels like Indiana Jones when he pulls out his gun. The elders react with horror. They all have fairly high levels and are visibly shocked. Noticing their fear, Rob raises his hands and says that before he is identified, he would like to introduce himself. But the elders don't want introductions. They are too disgusted to see a human. They only want to know what he is doing there. They ask why Riordan hasn't acted yet, and a level 10 ranger shouted that the monster was right behind them, urging him to keep running without looking back. His status was registered. Confrontation. The human begged him to at least listen to what he had to say if he could understand him. Riordan ordered his rangers to retreat, but before they were able to, implying that he could finish him off even with a broken leg. But Riordan replies that it is not necessary, since the human has already made his decision. He is there to be judged. An elder makes it clear that their judgment is to remove the human from their presence, preferably by using their simulator. Rob, he introduces himself as Rob, and asks to be called Rob, instead of simply the human. He also says that it is a pleasure to meet them all. Kira finds this interaction quite amusing. Riordan explains that the elders must know that Rob is not from this world, and that he was transported there just 1 week ago. This provokes a moment of silence among the elders, after which they begin to reflect on Rob. One of them asks him what his currency is called. Currency. And Rob replies that it is called dollars. Then they ask him what the most powerful weapon in his world is, to which Rob responds that it is a nuclear bomb. They then ask him about the cataclysm, but Rab has no idea what they're talking about, though he concedes that it sounds serious. Finally, they inquire about his identity, the highest level person in his world. Rab responds that he has no idea, especially since his world doesn't even operate with levels. After a period of deliberation between they, the elders, appreciate Rab's sincerity. They come to an agreement that, for the time being, they will assume he is being truthful. However, they proceed to ask him if he is aware of the events that have transpired in his world. Rab confirms that he is, stating that he knows what the humans there did. Then, one of the elders poses the question of, speaking further, a huge bear attacked them. It was a level 42 forest lord, an ancient creature that dominated the top of the food chain. Its status was infected. How he expects them to even consider sparing his life if he is aware of their history. Rab answers that he could offer an apology on behalf of the entire humanity, if that would help, but he admits that any apology would be an empty gesture, and everyone in the room knows it. He explains 2 reasons. First, that he wasn't there and can't even begin to imagine the pain his people caused, and to pretend otherwise would be insulting. The second reason is that even if he is human and has no connection whatsoever to the massacre, he refuses to bear the guilt for what others did. The elders interpret Rob's statement as suggesting that they should not relate to him. They then ask him, why has he come before them? Rob responds that if he cannot return to his world, he would like to become part of their community. An elder accuses Rob of simply seeking refuge from the dangers outside. Rob admits that this is true, but adds that this place is the closest thing to a home that he has ever found. There are roads, buildings, and good people. He wishes that he could become friends with them. Kira seems very impressed with Rob's presentation. Then, Rob says that all he is asking for is an opportunity. The elders give him dark looks, but suddenly, Rob sees a message. His diplomacy level has increased. He can't believe it. He actually did it. The elders applaud his speech, and Rob, relieved, begins to have hope, but then, one of them, with a cold expression, informs him that they will be voting to execute him. Exactly what Rob feared. No matter. Riordan attacked the bear, but his weapon got stuck, giving the monster an opportunity to focus its attention on him. The bear roared and lunged toward Riordan. How convincing his words were, they simply don't care. Rob tries to remain calm, aware that they are probably expecting him to conform to their expectations, stereotypes they have about humans. So he simply asks, why? An old man responds that seeing him makes them want to scream and tear out their own hair. His mere existence reminds them of everything they have lost. The entire panel conveys the same feeling. R thinks that if everyone blindly follows the leader, he is lost, and that maybe it's time to say goodbye to the world. But then one of the wise men says that he will vote to let Rob stay. Rob immediately decides that this wise man has just become his fourth best friend. Another elder asks the wise man to explain his reasoning. The wise man says that in reality, he already intended to let the human stay, and Rob's words only reinforced his opinion. He believes that Rob has a lot to offer, teach him about their world, and seems willing to adapt to it. Another elder accuses the wise man of having a weakness for humans, insinuating which should be considered treason, but another elder interrupts, saying there is something more important to discuss. He wants Rob to read aloud the status effects he currently has. Rob suspects it's a trap and looks at Kita, who nods for him to proceed. He checks his stats and sees, the same as yesterday, hopeful melancholy. But what interests them most is the ecstasy of his high-level life. When Rob mentions this, the Teldas forget just when it looked like Riordan would be devoured, the human appeared from behind and defeated the bear with a single slash of his sword. After the bear fell, the human leveled up. Elders look at him with such intensity that it almost seems as if Rob insulted them. Seeing Rob's expression, the elders realize that he doesn't understands the gravity of the ecstasy in his level-obsessed life. Kita had already warned him about this, and now Rob understands why she always wanted to check his stats. The wise man explains that in this world, all living beings desire to level up, as levels represent vital power, and what being doesn't crave more power? However, for humans, it's an obsession. The wise man says that once a human experiences the sensation of leveling up, they are chained to it forever, finding it more addictive than food, love, or anything else. The elders observe that the fact that this ecstasy is already appearing in Rob's status effects signifies that the process has begun. Rob remembers that, indeed, when he leveled up, he felt incredibly good, better than anything he has experienced. The elves also fear that humans can level up much faster than other races. Rab, who was recently 10 Zyb day, level 1, is now level 10. Ecstasy will take control of him. The elder asks Rab to look inside himself. He has had to kill quite a few things to level up so fast. They are sure he had doubts at first, but now he may not have as many as before, and they remember how he almost killed them too, just to gain experience. He would never have considered killing even an event on Earth. He didn't even touch the frogs. Now, however, he has. Leveling up from level 5. Riordan used Identify again, and discovered that the human now had a moderate life level status. Riordan had not, afraid of what he is becoming, and wants to get rid of it, but the elders tell him that he cannot. Once it appears on his character sheet, it never truly disappears. Even in a mild state like it is now, it's certainly manageable. However, the more you level up, the stronger the compulsions will become. Those with a moderate addiction to leveling up can still function, but once it reaches an advanced stage, things get ugly fast. There's a reason why humans sent those affected to the Northern Front to die fighting. Rob says he would never let it get to that point, though. But the elders remind him that all the other humans thought the same way, and those who succumbed to the addiction also lost their ability to choose. They lose their peace and become violent, with the sole purpose of ascending to the next level. They can never again trust someone who has that corruption within them. Character sheet. They cannot, nor will they accept anyone into their village who might lose themselves to that bloodlust. After hearing all of this, terrifying, Rob gives them permission to kill him should they ever see signs that he is losing himself. As they say, the addiction to leveling up never disappears. So Rab agrees to that fate and decides he will keep his addiction where it is now, and if he fails, Riordan will be able to end him, since Rab himself doesn't want to harm anyone. Riordan also says that he saw the human kill the Forest Lord and gain 4 levels in one go, but even then, witnessed such a rapid level increase in a long time and remembered how alarming it could be. The human confronted Riordan, accusing him of trying to kill him. That's how he managed to keep his addiction in a moderate state. The wise elder points out that gaining so many levels at once would have pushed any other human over the edge into a advanced state. But somehow, as Riordan explains, Rob managed to suppress his impulses, reducing his addiction to a manageable level. The elders inquire whether Riordan is supporting the human. Riordan replies that he is simply presenting the facts. Rob mentally notes that he will definitely have to bake a cake for the level 48 mister after receiving so much support. Then, all the elders decide to resolve the matter through a vote. Some vote to allow him to live and remain, while others want him dead, feeling he doesn't belong there. Only one vote remains. Elder points out that their village already has enough problems with the growing infection, and the human would only cause another source of disturbance. So, suddenly, a sword descends, and it's Kira. She says she's tired of being a silent bystander to this charade and believes Roab has proven he acts in good faith, and will continue to do so. The old man points out that Kira didn't fight on the front lines or witness human brutality firsthand, but Kira counter-argues that her parents did, and they still taught her to judge people by their actions, not their lineage. The elders stop her and warn her to be cautious. Kira declares there's no way she can simply remain silent. What are they going to do? Reduce her? He remembered that he hadn't done anything to provoke Riordan, and yet, Riordan attacked him just like everything else in that cursed forest. After gaining 4 levels by defeating the salary, which is already a meager amount, even Rab agrees with that sentiment. The old man doesn't like this, but Rab points out that it bothers him that they pay him so little, someone who clearly works hard and is a passionate member of her community. What bothers him the most is that it bothers her too. If she didn't care, maybe he wouldn't either, but she does care. And, surprise, it turns out that Rab is capable of basic empathy. If she were paid a decent wage, she could have a house she could be proud of. Although, honestly, he thinks her current house is already pretty good. Kira stops Rod, because she doesn't want him to talk about it, but Rod keeps insisting that it's true, her house is great. Then Kira clarifies that she means she doesn't want him to talk about her wanting a bigger house, because that embarrasses her. The old man points out that simple compassion and empathy are all he wanted to see, and then welcomes Rab to the village. Hearing this, Kira is overjoyed, and Riordan agrees with everything as well. Afterward, all the villagers gather for the rituals. Menta's funeral. Although only a few rangers remain now, they never felt that way when Menta was among them. His kind nature and his desire to protect them were palpable to all. The last funeral Rab attended was his grandmother's. He is surprised that they even let him in, and wishes he had something to say. Then he asks if anyone would like to say a few words of farewell. Someone comments that they are Bear, the many levels he would gain if he managed to defeat Riordan. Just a week prior, this human, Rob, had been living a normal life, chatting. They're far too often lately. Rab then sees the elder, who voted in his favor. Rab quickly clarifies that it wasn't Kira's fault, but the old man isn't there to listen. Blaming her is difficult, although she admires Rob for so quickly defending a friend. The old man then asks Rob if he knows why this village doesn't have a name. Roab replies that he had been wondering about it, and the old man explains that it is a bitter tale involving bureaucracy. The catastrophic event destroyed everything, including their way of life. Every person there, every hill warrior, came from 5 or 6 different villages. Almost all the elves who remain in the region now live in this place. Agreeing on a name for their new home proved impossible because everyone wanted to name it, in honor of what they had lost, but each person had lost different things. Therefore, this village remains nameless. They found each other. Others formed new families, only to lose that as well. Kira says that while she didn't share blood ties with Menta, he was still like a brother to her. They found each other like broken pieces, and day by day, they helped each other put themselves back together. But now that he's gone, she doesn't know what to do. Rab is really worried about Kira, but the old man tells him that he should let her grieve in her own way. Then they take Menta to the cemetery. Seeing the worry in Rab's eyes, Kira tells him that he doesn't need to ask, and that she is okay. Rab doesn't even want to imagine what he would feel if it were Jessen who had died. He couldn't even, with his friend Jessen about the party from the night before. Jason told him that it had been epic and that he should have been there. Rob and Jason had been best friends. Say goodbye. Then he notices some marks and wonders if Menta always had them. Then he realizes something. Menta has opened his eyes. He asks the others if they're seeing the same thing, or if it's just another one of their strange dreams. Riordan confirms that he definitely sees it too. Kira is very worried about Menta, but Rob tells her to take his hand because that's no longer Menta. They just need to look at him. It seems like there's some kind of parasite on him. Riordan identifies it as a corpse eater, even though he's never heard of one outside of a dungeon. Suddenly, a large number of crows begin to appear, all heading towards the village as well. Rock tells Riordan that he needs to leave because they'll need him there. He then assures him not to worry, as he'll take care of things there. Riordan asks Rob to make sure to take Kira back home safely. Then, Menta rises, transformed into a level 18 corpse eater, essentially a zombie. Kira. She wonders what the hell happened to her, but suddenly, Menta pounces on her. Rob was ready to attack, but Kira stops him. However, Rob, sorry, but that's not Menta anymore. So Rob attacks to make sure Menta doesn't touch Kira, but Menta knocks him down, and Rob is pretty sure that many parasites will manage to touch him. Rob falls onto one of the graves. Kira tries to talk to Menta, telling her that it's her. Kira cries, hoping Menta will recognize her. But Menta shows no interest in remembering anyone. Menta's only interest is in something else. Rob gets back up because he doesn't want this corrupt Menta to attack, since kindergarten. However, their lives changed drastically when a dark entity suddenly appeared at their school. While everyone, Kira, but this Menta is very strong, so strong that he manages to give Rob a good beating. And just when it seemed like all was lost, Menta does something even. It's getting stranger. He sticks out his tongue. Luckily, Kira uses her sword at just the right moment. She apologizes, explaining that she couldn't allow any strange behavior involving his tongue. Rob feels he is relieved to have received help from her. Kira cries as she says goodbye to her old friend, hoping that he can now rest in peace. A status message also. It also appears, confirming that the enemy has been defeated, but reminding them that this enemy was once their oldest friend. Back in the town, Kira thanks Rob for helping her, but Rob replies, that's exactly what friends are for. Riordan comments that all the crows headed towards a large crystal. They flew directly towards it, perhaps searching for the source of power. However, Riordan never thought that the infected individuals were able to coordinate an attack in that manner. Riordan informs the elder, who also inspects the area, that Kira and the human returned safe and sound. The old man points out that the corpse eater possessed Menta so quickly just outside the town gates, it signifies that the crystal's power is weakening. Riordan mentions that his purification defense is still functioning, but the old man questions how long it will last if the crystal's magic fades and the enemies reach the source of power. It would be a disaster. Riordan remarks that the ranger, as terrified, which was understandable, considering his fear of ending up in the creature's stomach. Malik cried, begging Ortol to use his, was fleeing in terror. The entity caught Jason. Hassan screamed for help, desperately hoping that Rob would save him. Rob ran towards him, even though he had never been the heroic type. Units have been decimated. They have no other option, so he decides to gather the young rangers for training. Kira is a warrior class, and Riordan already. He has seen the damage it can cause, and he also believes they should consider the human. He understands that the human is now part of the village, and they could train him as well. He is strong, and with training, he will become even stronger. Later, we see R wandering around, quite happy, especially since he heard the words, "Welcome to the village." Those were the most beautiful words he had ever heard, and now no one is throwing chairs at him. But then, Kira tells him to move. Rod asks why, and Kira quickly points out that things are about to get violent because the other villagers aren't too happy. The old man offers them a place to hide. After a while, the crowd disperses, at least for now, but they will wait for another opportunity. Riordan points out that the news has already spread. The people are aware that there's a human in their midst. Kira is stressed because there's an angry mob searching for him. They were lucky that the funeral provided a bit of a distraction, but Rabeson doesn't care about that. He can handle the yelling and waving fists. What he's concerned about is Kira. He tells her that if she needs to talk about Menta, he's ready to listen. Kira simply says no. Riordan also acknowledges that Rob is right to worry. No one should have to say goodbye to a friend like that. He apologizes for not being able to help more. Kira replies that she's fine, and then decides to leave in order to. He tried to protect his friend, but suddenly chains bound his hands. Despite managing to protect Jason, Rob was absorbed by the entity. He thought he was going to die, but he soon woke up. Make sure the crowd disperses. Riordan accompanies her as well, ready to talk if Kira needs him to. Now, only the old man remains, who looks anxious, and Rob, who wonders why the old man is looking at him in such a way, as if he were an insect under a microscope. The old man asks him what he calls his world. Rob answers, Earth. The old man comments that that would make him an earthling, and Rob senses that the old man has even more questions. Before he can ask them, Rob says that he has some questions as well, if the old man doesn't mind. The old man agrees, pointing out that they haven't yet formally introduced themselves. He introduces himself as Elder Duran. Since they have a long night ahead of them, he leads them to the library. The old man understands that Rob must be just as curious about his world as he is about Rob's, which is why he asks him to consider him a resource. Although everything seems vast and wonderful to him, apart, Rob still wants to find his way back home, but the old man admits that this matter is beyond his understanding, as Rob's arrival, up to this point, as far as they know, is unprecedented. Then, he inquires about his friend, who was almost pulled along with him. Do you want to know the old man's thoughts about that and if he will be all right? The old man believes his friend is safe and that the portal likely closed soon after Rob was transported. Rob feels that the old man is only saying that to reassure him, but he hopes he is correct nonetheless. The old man promises to re-examine the ancient scrolls. Although he was initially hesitant to approach the light, he began to explore his surroundings. He now knew that he wasn't dead, which was a relief, but he had no idea where he was, in case he overlooked something. Meanwhile, Rob has about 10 unspent stat points and is unsure what to do with them, since they don't. Levels exist, but people simply live without knowing their exact statistical value. The old man understands that RAP refers to the noble art of min-maxing. Upon hearing that, referring to the term, Rob is surprised, since it's a term they don't even know here. The old man then asks Rob to show him his character sheet. Rob asks if that's something personal or just a local custom, since Kira had also asked him for his stats barely 5 minutes after meeting him. Riordan arrives and says, of course she did. Kira feels a little embarrassed, though. The old man then asks about the mob, and Kira comments that Riordan scared it off just by looking at it. Kira then talks about how she doesn't understand the reluctance surrounding character sheets, given that they can see the levels with the having the ability to identify makes gathering information directly more efficient. Then, he asks Kira why her strength stat is 55, considering she is at her level was 50. Riordan becomes enraged upon learning that Kira once again allocated all her points to strength, but Kira defends her strategy, arguing that her combat style works well. However, Riordan dislikes how much she depends on her danger sense, because she definitely needs more vitality. While reviewing Rob's sheet, the old man finds it amusing that he has a similar issue. He apologizes, worried that he might sound. It seemed like a completely new world, far away from the campus. His first decision was to find a way to return to Jessen. Insulting, but asks if Rob knows how to allocate points to stats other than vitality. Rob replies that he does, but a lot has happened since then. Everything happened as he expected, which is why he carried everything he needed to stay alive. After this, the old man tells him that he cannot recommend him to study magic. Assign nothing to magic, because to become a proper sorcerer, it is necessary to invest heavily in both mind and magic from the very beginning. Sadly, it looks like there will be no fireballs for Rob. The old man notices how Rob seems disheartened by that revelation and wonders if magic is so highly coveted in the world. His world. Rob says that many people would be willing to give an arm and a leg to be able to use magic, but no one on Earth is able to. This turns out to be a great shock for the old man. Rob then says that the only magic they have is pulling a coin out of someone's ear as a trick. Hearing this, the old man says, that's incredible. He must be really rich. Then, the old man comments that if he were Rob, he would allocate the points to perception, since it improves his senses and increases his ability to notice details, which will help him while he trains with the other young explorers under Riordan. This surprises Kira, and Riordan says that they will start tomorrow. Rob wonders if this means he will automatically become an explorer. Kira replies, no. The old man says Rob would have to officially change his class to explorer before the crystal. Doing so would grant him new powers and alter the course of his life. It is not a decision that should be taken lightly. He then noticed that his outfit was very different from his usual clothes, and that he even had a sword strapped to his back. His status window displayed his HP, stamina, XP, and level, resembling some kind of advanced virtual reality game. Lightly. Rob says that right now he just wants to decide what to eat for dinner. Then, Rob asks a quick question. He sees skill listed there. The old man confirms that dexterity influences his speed and reflexes, but then Rob points out that increasing strength would also make him faster because, well, his legs would be stronger. Riordan and Kira explain that it doesn't work that way. The old man also notes that for a character with so much vitality, his mental stat is quite high. Rob also mentions he was 19 when he arrived here. Riordan comments that only a human would be given such an opposite advantage. The old man suggests that Rob must have received that stat distribution representing his efforts in his original world. This means that Rob is quite a learned man. Rob understands that this must be the old man's way of calling him intelligent, even though he's never heard it phrased that way before. To Manor. Rob says he's not a genius or anything of the sort. He simply had a standard education in history and mathematics. Upon hearing the word mathematics, the old man becomes excited, which further pleases Rob, as he interprets it as another way of calling him a genius. However, the old man then mentions that it would be beneficial to have someone review his ledger. He presents it to Rob, who immediately identifies an error. In one of the lines, the correct total should be 60,000. This grants Rob a passive mathematics skill that enhances his speed in solving mathematical problems. First, he decided that he needed to remain calm. Mathematicians. But then, all of a sudden, Rob experiences another sensation. He checks his status, his level remains moderate, and he desires it to stay that way for always. Kira asks if he is alright, and he only replies that he was worried about the ever-present threat of turning into a bloodthirsty monster. Nothing important. Then, Rob asks if he could look through his library to conduct his own research. The old man says, of course, but he also mentions that everything is written within it, much to the dismay of Rabat, a die-hard Tolkien fan. The old man then points out that automatic translation is a skill that can be unlocked by those with a strong mental fortitude, and who are also voracious readers. Rap considers himself a bookworm, which is wonderful because the old man now has the opportunity to give him lessons on Elvish writing, hopefully, the machine translation skill will unlock soon. The chapter begins, and we see Rab doing a lot of calculations, thinking that it's working, but suddenly he feels like his brain is being crushed. Kira also points out that his nose doesn't look so good. He has suffered brain damage. Riordan quickly asks Elder Duran to use a healing spell. Rab thinks he's either about to unlock the ability of automatic translation, or he's in real trouble. As the moments pass, it seems like he really is in trouble. He starts to lose. The last thing he needed was to panic, but then, suddenly, a very good reason to lose his composure appeared. A crazed undead began to knowledge, and suddenly receives a skill that appears to be machine translation, but something is wrong. Things look very strange. Some entities, they are discussing how this event will determine the fate of humanity. They are being urged to place their bets, and the outcome leaves everyone in shock. It seems luck is on Rob's side, as he doesn't suffer any permanent brain damage. The system even apologizes for the inconvenience caused by surviving the reconfiguration process, which was due to an error on its part, and grants Rob an additional point in mind. With that, Rob reaches level 11. All he wanted was to read, not to experience such devastating mental breakdowns. But at least he obtained the active skill of self-translation from writing. This makes Rob wonder if he is trapped in some kind of virtual reality. However, the system clearly states that it is not. He is in a virtual world. Kira arrives immediately and thanks the gods when she sees that Rab is awake. She just hopes he hasn't forgotten her name, Rab. He remembers that she is Kira and is glad to see a friendly face. However, for Kira, that's a worrying sign, as his face has never been described as friendly, at least according to the villagers. Rab apologizes for scaring her, but him laughing worries her even more. He was just about to die, and that is no laughing matter. Joke. The last thing she wants is to have to bury two friends in a single day. Rab downplays it, saying that sarcasm and jokes are his way. Approaching him, he drew his sword, and although he had no idea how to use it, he barely managed to defeat the enemy. However, he was seriously injured, and of coping with things. Fortunately, the system gave him the all clear, and unless he's lying or mistaken, there doesn't seem to be any lasting harm. Permanent. Kita mentions that the system never lies, although Rap thinks it has a rather dark sense of humor. Since his notifications usually include a good dose of sarcasm, Kita immediately advises him to keep those kinds of observations to himself, because claiming that the system speaks to you is a clear sign of mental imbalance around here. Taking note of that, Rob asks them to tell him exactly what happened. Kira replies that, well, many things happened at the same time. The old man used a medical analysis spell and discovered that Rap's brain was disintegrating at a fundamental level. Naturally, that doesn't sound very good to Rob, Still, he's glad to have at least learned to translate. In the end, it's a fairly decent consolation prize. However, Kira points out that she was simply fortunate that Riordan found a healer in time. Unfortunately, a more serious problem soon emerges. Suddenly, a great commotion is heard outside. A large and enraged crowd has gathered. Many of them are armed with dangerous weapons. They have been there for hours. Rob, at least, is glad that they didn't burn down the building before Kira mentions that they actually did try to. She then asks Rob to remain calm while she goes to find Riordan, who will make them back down. Rob suffered severe bleeding, making it clear that this was all very real, and not just a simple virtual reality simulation. As his HP continued, he decides he might as well get to reading. It may seem crazy after having been on the brink of death, but now that he has the ability to machine translation, he feels 90% certain it will be fine, and for him, those are better odds than usual. He starts reading about the cataclysm and eventually falls asleep, even with the persistent outside noise, with voices shouting and demanding their concerns be heard, specifically that no humans be allowed to remain in these lands. The volume increases non-stop, causing great discomfort to R. He wonders what kind of fantastic caffeine those people are consuming. Then, someone in the crowd calls him a murderer and a monster. That was it. Rock had already had enough. Suddenly, the system notifies him that, from a diplomatic point of view, this is a bad idea. Of course, Rock tells the system to street. He doesn't need a supervisor at the moment. Just as Riordan arrives, he comments on how creative the crowd is becoming with their insults. Rob bursts through the door, yelling that his name is Rob, and that he's very happy to have met them all. He even praises their rhymes. But now, he would really appreciate it if they would all shut up for once so he could get some sleep. After that, Rob slammed the door shut and went back inside. Kira said that, honestly, she would have done the same thing, while Riordan mentioned that he would assign some rookie rangers to deal with the crowd. To decrease, Rob was faced with the terrifying possibility that this was not a dream, but a real nightmare. He wished he could wake up in his warm bed. However, Kira walked directly into the crowd. Riordan asked her what she was doing, and she replied that she was making sure no one threw paint on him, to his house, which he was still paying off. Some time had passed. Kira had fallen asleep 2 hours ago and was now sleeping soundly. But Rab, he really missed his white noise app. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a door opening. He wondered where the guards were stationed. Then, someone burst in. Using his identify skill, RCK saw that it was an elf baker's apprentice, who was clearly terrified, but also determined. Rock calmly approached and greeted him, but the elf immediately pulled out a knife. Rock asked him if he really wanted to do that. The elf screamed and lunged at him, shouting that it was for feral. Using a rag, Rab made a quick maneuver and appeared behind the elf, who then threw the knife back. But Rab ducked down and dodged the attack. He then grabbed the elf's arm, causing the weapon to fall to the ground. Once captured, the elf begged for a lofty, quick end. First, he had lost Ferric, and now he believed he would lose his own life. He prepared himself for death. At that moment, Kira arrived, asking what was happening. Rab was surprised that she slept with her sword, but Kira said she wasn't going to explain that. Still, she was ready to help. Rab told her that everything was under control and led the elf outside, telling him to go home, wash his face, and get some sleep. Inside, Rab told Ranger skills to escape, but Ortal replied that he had none left. Suddenly, Ortal noticed an update. He had acquired a new, but the constant loss of HP indicated that he was truly in danger of dying. In a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding, he tied a piece. Kira, that it was nothing, just a minor assassination attempt. Maybe he should start sleeping with a sword too. Sometimes Rab wondered if he was the monster everyone claimed he was, but Kira assured him that wasn't true. However, after reading about the cataclysm, Rab had begun to think a little differently. He knows that humans were losing the war, so they created a magical bomb so powerful that it could break the world. But they lost control and apparently vaporized themselves just to charge it. Now, Rab realizes that this could very well be elven propaganda. Still, what's truly disturbing is that the humans of his own world aren't so different. They just use nuclear weapons instead of magical ones. Seeing that, Rab was feeling dejected, and Kira told him that everyone must make a decision, whether they are humans or elves. That young elf entered with the intention of taking the life of Rob. That was his choice, but Rob responded violently. He showed her the exit with empathy and understanding, which, according to Kita, makes Rob a kind man. He just wants Rob to fall asleep while clinging to that idea. Hearing that, Rob finally calms down enough to rest, although he definitely forgot to wash his feet. The next day, we discovered that Rab didn't actually sleep, and neither did Kira, because of the nightmare she had. In Rab's case, it was the constant fear that more assassins would appear. Kira tells him that it is a serious crime and that they should report it. However, since it was only a dawn of cloth around the wound, but the blood wouldn't stop gushing, he had never felt such intense pain before. He tried to recall something useful from his classes. Boy who was pushed to the limit. Rob wants to prevent him from getting hurt, even though the boy didn't make it easy to prevent him from being killed. Kira tells Rob that he grabs his hood and his sword. They head outside to the crystal so he can choose his class. Everyone still glares at him as if they want to kill him, but Kira assures him that she will protect him. If anyone tries anything, she's going to strike them down with her sword. Rob is surprised that she's willing to do that for him, knowing it could turn her into an outcast. But Kira says her reputation is already ruined anyway. It's not like they can hate her any more than they already do. Besides, there's no one left for her to disappoint. Her parents are already dead. Riordan respects her, but he's a mentor, not a friend. Mint was the only one who truly appreciated her, and now he is no longer among the living. That reminds Rob of when he used to have the loneliness status effect not long ago, but it hasn't reappeared since he met Kira, so at least she knows there's someone there who likes him. Kira brushes it off, saying maybe it's just because he doesn't know her well enough yet. She reminds him that she was the one who killed Menta twice. Still, Rab tells her that she's basically his third best friend, which stings Kira a little. Especially knowing she ranks below a sword that Rab is considering naming. Maybe that would make it easier for him to sleep at night with her. Standing before the large crystal, Kira explains that no one knows its origin. It's always been there. Perhaps it's a gift from the gods. Biology in high school. His mind wandered, remembering how he used to cope with things through humor. He thought of Jessen's mother, who was a nurse, and who had this particular village took a direct hit during the cataclysm. Relocating it from its windswept original location was an odyssey in itself. Kira also explains to him that Rab can change his class at any time, but most people don't because it slows down their growth rate. So, if he wants to reach level 50, like the truly exemplary fighters, he will have to stick with his first choice. Rab wants to reach level 99, but Kira points out that no one has ever reached that level before. Most non-combatant civilians end up around level 19 inches their old age. She, herself, is already at level 28, despite being the same age as Rab, although she has also fought more enemies than half the village combined. Rab is thinking about choosing the ranger class, since it seems like a good way to gain everyone's sympathy and support. However, Kira doesn't think that's a good idea. We'll end up choosing berserker. That class wouldn't be much help to Rod, in his attempt to avoid looking like a human, thirsty for elven blood. Kira knows this, but she has a premonition. Rod places his hand on the crystal, and a long list of classes appears before him. Many of the utilitarian classes are essentially trades, and although they sound peaceful, he doesn't want to die, so he discards them. He also automatically eliminates all magic-based classes, since he failed to seize that opportunity monumentally. The pugilist class is tempting, since he's good at fighting, but hitting creatures with claws. Talked about dissociation techniques, like elevating the wound to alleviate the pain. He momentarily appreciated that strategy, even though it proved ineffective, and Fang sounds like a terrible idea. He wonders what the average life expectancy is for that class. Swordsman, however, that sounds brilliant. He loves his sword and has already reached level 3 in swordsmanship, so he decides to choose that class. Kira had already checked his stats using. He identifies Berserker as the class that best suits his constitution. That class offers lifesteal, allowing him to heal for 25% of the damage inflicted on any living creature. Normal plants, such as trees or grass, do not count unless they have special properties. He also gains Battle Fever, which increases all of his stats by 1 for every 30 seconds in combat, and Blood for Blood, which increases damage dealt by 1% for every 1% of his maximum health that he's missing. All of that just feels right, something to build on, like a furnace that needs fuel. Then they go to meet Riordan, where many rangers are already training. Riordan doesn't appreciate Rab Kira using Identify on others. Although Kira points out that their profiles were configured as public within the town, Riordan introduces Rab to the group as his new apprentice, which provokes visible displays of disdain. They didn't expect to see a monster among them. It's not exactly the warm welcome Rab expected. Kira warns him that if he seeks to make friends, he'll have to look for them elsewhere. Those people aren't the smiling type, especially Aaliyah. But Rab thinks to himself that the same thing as his HP continued to dwindle. Driven by an iron will, Rob declared that he would not allow his life to end in such an absurd and, could be said of Kira. And yet he has seen her smile. Riordan acknowledges that Rab may look different and that everyone has mixed feelings about him. A human living in their village clearly states that they need all the help they can get. To break the tension, he proposes a friendly training session. Friendly training to welcome Rob. Rob finds this strange, considering he's never been in a real fight and has no idea how to fight with bare fists or anything of the sort. Kira mentions the 100 cave spiders she faced, while Riordan mentions the forest lord. The others are left speechless. They can't believe that this human defeated such a creature, but Rob is telling the truth. Apparently, he can read Elvish, but he still doesn't understand it when it's spoken. Still, the body language is clear. Most of them just want to walk away. However, an elf steps forward. He confronts and challenges Rob about the way he moves. Rob needs a translator to understand the message, but he definitely wants to take him down. Riordan insists that everyone should treat the human with respect. It is revealed that this elf was on guard the night before, possibly the same one who allowed the would-be assassin to sneak in. Kira is furious, but Rob says that he can handle it himself. The elf named Tarek is ready to begin the Ardian So duel, but before they start, Rap wants to clarify the rules. There will be a countdown, a bell, and a signal. But suddenly, Tarek launches his attack, abrupt way. He refused to accept that an unknown entity had transported him to a hostile world, only to let him die. With renewed courage, he stood up, knocking Rob to the ground. He immediately goes for a finishing blow, but Rob dodges and manages to grab Tarek's sword. The situation begins to turn really dangerous. Rob intends to fight without a weapon, but Tarek refuses to back down, not wanting a human to look down on him, off his shoulder. So Rob decides to give him a fair fight, something he can't say Tarek offered him the previous night. Rob throws a solid punch, so hard that for a moment, he wonders if he should have chosen the pugilist class after all. But even without that class, he manages a respectable hit. Tarek jumps on him and starts hitting him repeatedly. It's clear that he harbors a deep hatred towards humans, shouting that they never played fair and that everything they did was lying and hurting those around them. This guy clearly has serious trust issues when it comes to humans. Rob manages to say that at least he's not the type of person to order others to kill. That only makes Tarek angrier, and he prepares to hit him again. But before he can, Kira grabs his arm and tells him to stop. Riordan also shouts that enough is enough. This was definitely not what he had in mind for a simple training session. Rob, catching his breath, reveals that the same guy tried to kill him the night before, without. However, Tarek accuses Rob of displaying typical human behavior, lying to gain an advantage. He insists that Rob is only bitter because Tarek was going to, vowing to not only survive, but also to confront whoever was responsible and force them to open a portal so he could return home. At that, beat him before Kira intervened. He taunts him, asking if the human is so weak that he needs to hide behind her. Riordan, trying to keep calmly, he asks Rob if he has any proof to back up his accusations. Rob explains that instead of being watched over, he had an unwanted visitor last night who tried to kill him. Instead of keeping an eye on him, Tarek allowed the assassin to slip through. It was a trap, a witch hunt. Even if the attacker was just a child, Riordan appears skeptical until he sees Tarek's expression, which betrays a certain tension. At that moment, another elf steps forward and admits the truth before things get worse. He confesses that he actually fell asleep during his shift, leaving Rob unattended for an undetermined amount of time. He wanted to go to check on the human, but Tarek told him not to, claiming that it might cause Riordan to discover how poorly they had been handling things. Done. Now, in the present, Riordan is furious at this irresponsible behavior and severely scolds both apprentices. Unfortunately, Roby doesn't say a word, so Kira sums it up for him. The guard fell asleep during his shift. Riordan then apologizes on behalf of the trainees, since it was not intentional, and he believes it will not happen again. He hopes Rob can forgive them. Rob considers the matter closed, which confuses Riordan, who doesn't understand what kind of bridge he is referring to. Rob explains that it's just a human expression, so everything is fine, except for his broken nose, which still hurts. At that moment, a message appeared, indicating that he had defeated the Berserk Wolf, which allowed him to level up to level 2. This victory improved his stats, and, surprisingly, Tarek offers a sincere apology. Rob accepts it immediately, although he asks for some ice. Kira simply casts a spell. With healing in place and vital surge, Rap's nose is as good as new. Now that Rap knows there was no plot against him, He sincerely hopes they can start over. He's glad to finally get to know them properly. The others stare at him in astonishment, unable to believe that this guy possesses such a regeneration ability. To be exact, he has level 4 regeneration, but the amount of vitality he possesses seems like too much for any living being. Another elf comments that being a fast learner grants him that luxury. Humans, by nature, gain levels and skills faster than others, and that alone adds to the reasons why many dislike Rab. To the elves, he is nothing more than a newcomer who can barely hold a sword without cutting himself, but which is already at level 11. Unlocking regeneration also requires spending a week recovering from a potentially fatal wound, and yet, the human managed to bypass the most difficult requirements. But what is that elf talking about? It's not as if Rob hasn't suffered. On the first day, a wolf tore off almost his entire arm. On the second day, he fell off a cliff and barely managed to hold on. His health was in the single digits, and he was practically in a terminal state when he climbed back up. On the third day, the forest lord slammed him against a tree and nearly broke his spine. So yes, he definitely granted him a rare ability that activated upon experiencing a near-death situation, demonstrating his unyielding will to live. From now on, every time has been through quite a lot. This only leads to the elf calling him a miserable creature, screaming that she lost her entire family during the purge. Rob. He apologizes, but tells him it wasn't his fault. In response, she kicks him in the face. Riordan intervenes, stopping her, and reminding everyone that it's not a place for that kind of behavior, reminding them that this is a training ground and nothing more. The elf understands, but seems satisfied after kicking Rab in the face without any repercussions. Riordan then gives them a break from hand-to-hand combat, and decides they will do circuit training. He warns them that if he returns and finds someone dead, he will assign them sewage duty for a month. While Rab recovers from what Alia did to his face, Kira decides to show him around the area. During their walk, they cross paths with Ontol, whom Rab finds strangely familiar. Ontol is the adventurous elf, who we saw fleeing from the human monster at the beginning of the story. Rab instantly recalls their brief encounter, which lasted only 2 seconds, just before Ontol left, running. Ontol also comments on how different Rab looks now that he's cleaned the grime off his face. He mentions that Samira, a great swordswoman, is also there, Chinese, and the nicest of the group. The muscle-bound idiots are there, showing off, but Rab already knows them. One is Volto, and the other, the one who broke his nose, is Tarek. They're usually a couple of idiots, but generally they're all right. Rab notices that Tarek has brown hair, which seems unusual among. If his HP dropped below 25%, his vitality would double, and all of his defensive and vitality-related skills would improve. Furthermore, he acquired the elves. Kira quickly tells him to never mention that again, since Tarek's grandfather was human, and it all stems from paternal trauma. Part of Tarek's family died during the cataclysm, and he was covering for Volto because they were best friends. Rob finds the situation similar to the relationship I had with Jessen. Suddenly, a sharp object whizzes right past Rob. It's Alia, who has escaped him yet again. Without a doubt, this is his least favorite person in town. He's already had enough of her antics, but Kira tells him she's not worth the trouble. After all, he won't gain any experience by fighting her. Alia wonders if the human is ready for more target practice. Rob, impassive, asks if she really wants to fight that badly, because if so, he's surrendering right now. He then turns to Kira, expecting her to handle the situation. Kira gladly accepts being allowed to do her thing. Volto can't believe Rob let go of. Kita pounced on Alia like an attack dog. Now no one wants to be on Rob's bad side. Rob himself is a little confused because, at first, he thought it was a good idea, but seeing how things are escalating, he's not so sure anymore. Actually, it's not even about Rob anymore. Those two barely need an excuse. Tarek wonders how much longer that human will continue hiding behind his friends. Rob doesn't like that, so he tells him that if he wants a rematch, he's ready. But suddenly, they both realize that things have gotten really intense. So intense. Skill, Flight of the Coward. This ability, triggered by his inability to confront danger, allowed him to recover energy while fleeing from passive skills of tough skin and regeneration. In the real world, Rab was known for his love of video games and chaos, often preferring to play. That they decide to postpone the fight. Alia accuses Kita of letting Menta die because she was too consumed by bloodlust, like he was trying to help him. This only angers Kira even more. Just when things are about to get out of control, Riordan intervenes, stopping them and reminding them of the warning he gave them before leaving. Kira points out that Alia was the one who started everything. However, for Riordan, it doesn't matter how Alia provoked Kira. What matters is that the village cannot afford such serious injuries resulting from internal fighting. The last thing they need is to lose more lives. What would happen if the village were attacked while Alia's injuries were being treated? They would be without a healer and without a scout during a critical phase of defense. He forbids Kira from continuing to train until further notice. She will be assigned to patrols where veteran scouts can keep an eye on her. This makes Kita worries about Rab while also being jealous of the master's favorite. Riordan admits that Rab clearly needs to learn to defend themselves, so they'll have double training and extra time with the old man. Riordan feels he's already spoiled them all too much. If they don't improve, they won't be able to defend themselves. They'll have no hope of surviving out there. For now, she just hopes they get to work as soon as possible. As she leaves, Kita apologizes and tells Rab. She said if anyone hits him again, she'll rip their guts out. Until then, she'll be guarding the door tonight. Rab just asks her not to worry before going out to party with friends. Even though his recent conversation with Jason was merely an illusion in his mind, Rab still longed to see him again and return to so much. He'll be fine, but sensing the dangerous aura behind him, he can only hope to be safe. During archery training, many arrows whiz past him, and once again, she is the one responsible. In the meeting with the elder, Rob is thrilled to learn some magic. However, the old man only wants to ask him questions about Earth, which Rob feels is a form of punishment. During sword training, he suffers humiliation. Then comes another tedious session about hairdryers with the old man. During running practice, he lags far behind. After so much effort, the system finally offers a sliver of praise, stating that he has achieved a time comparable to that of elven children, and thus awards him 1 point in stamina. That also grants him an active skill, Swift Footstep, which provides 2 points of functional dexterity to his running speed when he runs for more than 30 seconds. But this guy, bribery doesn't work on R. Even so, he tells the system that it sucks. In another session with the old man, they explain how these systems were controlled in the past, with buttons like in video games. The old man asks if Rap thinks this world is a game. Rap responds that this world is real, strange, violent, but real nonetheless. He's bled too much to think it's anything else. It's not something fun like a video game. If he had a choice, he never would have come here. But now that he's here, what he does matters. At least Volto is starting to be a little kinder to him during training. Rat continues to train, and home by any means. However, in his vision, his friend sadly informed him that even if he were to return, they would not be able to meet again, because Rab was. Even though he isn't who he wants to be, he believes that maybe he can become someone he would like to know. At least those thoughts bring him comfort. Although the old man is more interested in the germ theory, Rob is also improving at dodging the projectiles that Aaliyah throws at him. Upon hearing, talking about tiny creatures called germs, which are transmitted from person to person without proper hygiene, suddenly makes the old man feel the need to bathe vigorously. His sword skills are also improving to the point of making Tarek surrender. Riordan comments on Rob's sword, asking if it is made of dwarven steel. Rob simply hands his sword over for him to examine it himself. It is certainly well balanced. Dwarven blades never wear down or lose their edge. They are as sharp as the cutting winds of a hurricane. With that being said, Riordan warns Rob not to rely too much on the sword, because a sword is only as good as the person wielding it. Rob figures that maybe all of that was just his strange way of saying good job. Later, we see Kira and Riordan heading towards the dungeon where Menta met her end. It appears that it has grown. They will have to purge it before it starts releasing the monsters that it contains. However, it seems that it is already too late for that, because the creatures have already begun to attack them. The Minotaur is muscular, and those muscles aren't just for show. Kira and Riordan immediately start running, but even so, supposedly dead. This revelation left Rab stunned. Jessen mentioned several scenarios, all ending in the same tragedy. Rab realized that they will have to face that thing alone. Kira has no idea if that's even possible, but suddenly, they find themselves forced to prepare for impact. The impact with the ground was incredibly powerful. Kira draws her sword, intending to use the Circle of Death, but the Minotaur strikes her. There's nothing more Kira can do, so she simply awaits the end. But suddenly, a burst of energy slams into the Minotaur from behind. The monster runs toward Riordan, which gives Kira the chance to attack from behind, finally landing a solid blow. The creature screams as Riordan leaps onto it from above, creating an opening for Kira to attack. She seizes the opportunity and defeats the enraged Minotaur with a satisfied smile on her face. Riordan congratulates her, although he hopes that next time she will be less messy. Kira apologizes for not being quite. He looks elegant, but suddenly another monster screams. His fight is far from over, as many more monsters arrive, and they are truly hungry. Since there are too many of them, Riordan decides to fall back in order to protect the village. The alarm bell rings, signaling that danger is imminent. Hearing the commotion, Rob wonders what's going on, but unfortunately, he still can't understand what everyone is saying. He can only observe as the entire village gathers around. The large crystal. Bolto explains that the elders are charging the crystal to activate its protective effects. At least, that's what he believes, as he has never seen them. Could not be sure of anything, since he hadn't been there to witness the events himself. Overwhelmed, Rab shouted, begging his friend to stop talking, realizing, do it before. But the situation looks critical for everyone. Kira arrives, saying she didn't have time to shower, but Rob is only concerned about whether she's injured. Kira explains that they encountered a minotaur while on patrol, indicating that the dungeon they discovered recently has become dangerously unstable, as to manifest such creatures into their world, so they must hurry. Everyone is waiting as monsters of unimaginable strength approach the village, minotaurs, griffins, and other beasts they previously only knew from stories. Riordan explains that their duty as scouts is to stop them, but they must also cut off the problem at its source, which is why he's forming a special unit to take down the dungeon. Rock gets uneasy when Riordan isn't looking, because he doesn't want to go. However, Volto and the other elves are excited to exterminate the dungeon. As the preparations get underway, Rob. He asks if he's the only one who isn't excited about going there. Kira explains that many don't truly understand the danger that lies within. Riordan will send him with 3 elite scouts. Their mission will be to support them. He also wants them to understand something important. They shouldn't try to get ahead of the scouts or question their orders, and they must do exactly as they are told. The creatures inside have only one mission: to eliminate and tear them apart. Suddenly, a notification pops up in front of Rob. Riordan has invited him to join his group. Besides him, there are Kira, Aaliyah, Bolto, Samira, Tarek, and Orntol. Rob isn't sure if he can handle this, that everything was a product of his own mind. Then, in the vision, Jessen told him that Rab hadn't saved him, and that he no longer wanted to be his friend. They remembered that incursion. Should he really risk it all just to level up? It's tempting, and just wanting to do it already tells him he's in. Riordan tells everyone that it's time to depart. However, Rapel tells Kira that he's sorry, but he'll have to withdraw before they even start. Kira is surprised, especially since she really did need him. They need him down there. She needs him there. Expressing her feelings like that is a bit embarrassing for her, so she suddenly says that she actually meant that Rob had backed her up before in that same dungeon, and if they already did it once, they can do it again. But one of the elite elves says that no matter what Kira wants, Rob is too much trouble. Bolto points out that Rapel is actually quite strong. He has seen him fight and can defend himself, but the elf says that Rob is still human, and they can't take that risk in such a dangerous place. Rob appreciates everyone's support, but he believes that the elite elf has reason. He can't do it. He is very sorry. Now that Roab has made his decision, the elite elf begins to head toward the dungeon. Each lost second brings them closer to the village's perdition. Rob tries to talk to Kita for a bit, but she tells him that he will be fine out there, since Rob has already seen what he is capable of. Plus, he'll be able to see everything from where he is, since they are still in the same group. She just wants Rob to take care of Aunt while they are away, and she promises that he will be back sooner than he thinks. Rob can only hope that she is right. The monsters keep trying to break they met when they were little, but now Jessen had grown up and no longer needed him. Laughing bitterly, Jessen fled, transforming into the entity that barrier, but so far, they have not succeeded. The villagers, along with Rob, begin shooting arrows at the creatures. Once thousands of arrows, when they land their blows, the monster opens itself up for another attack, which allows the other villagers to get closer and forge a path forward. Riordan knows the way, so he asks everyone to follow him, along with Kira. Rob watches as they move forward. Suddenly, trouble arises on the west end. They are already too spread out. A 3-headed dog appears, but Rob is ready to confront it. The villagers continue to fight against numerous monsters before they are able to enter the village. Rob jumps into battle against the 3-headed dog, which is quite enraged. He can't get too carried away, or he will level up, so he decides to lead the monster toward the cavalry. He acts as if he is the dog's owner, calling out to it to follow him and play fetch. Becomes the bait, and the monster roars, opening its mouth wide to bite off a chunk of fresh meat. However, Rob quickly uses swift step to escape. Riordan, who has just defeated a massive, monstrous serpent, sees Rab approaching. Rab apologizes for ruining the party, but says that they have another unwanted guest. However, the arrow he shoots misses its mark, and the dog leaps to attack him. Rab is genuinely worried, because if he fights too much, it might kill him, and the last thing he wants is to level up right now. Another arrow from the archers manages to pin the monster down. Rob tries to pull out another arrow, but the place, once again, ensnared Rob. Suddenly, Rob woke up from this nightmare, feeling physically much better, and relieved that he hadn't ended up like the man. Beast tries to bite his hand. In a reflex to protect himself, Rob attacks the dog, leaving it defeated. Fortunately, it was Riordan who gave. The final blow lands. No, Rob. Now he just needs a little help getting out from under the dog's head. Riordan is angry with Rob for not even having unsheathed his sword, wondering what he was thinking. Rob says he was just trying not to level up. But Riordan tells him that he should do whatever is necessary in situations like that. The last thing they need is for Rob to try to deny his nature, tempting death unnecessarily. They have already lost too many to sacrifice more for no reason. Suddenly, thinking about that, Rob opens the party screen and notices that Kita has very little health and is unconscious. The other members of the team aren't doing well either, except for Tarek, who still has quite a bit of health left. But it's poisoned, meaning everyone who went to the dungeon is on the verge of collapsing. Rob immediately tells Riordan that the group is in danger. Riordan tells Rob to go, and to take on Toll with him as well. He can't go because they don't need him to fight the monsters just yet. He believes that Rob has already experienced the dungeon, so he knows how dangerous it is. Riordan isn't expecting a miracle, but he still asks Rob to save as many people as he can. As they approach the dungeon, Rob asks Antol if he's ready. Antol wonders if it would be okay to say no. Rob admits that he feels the same way, but Wolf, who is now nothing more than a pile of slimy goo. He couldn't take his eyes off the creature, tormented by the fact that he was responsible for its death, says that they have to save their friends, so they'll have to risk it for Kira's sake. Antol also wants to protect his friends, so they both decide to enter together. As they head downstairs, Antol apologizes for being such a coward when they first met. He was afraid for his sister, Malika, as she's the only family he has. He feels like he might not have another chance to say this later, so he wants to get it off his chest now. Rob isn't happy with how things played out, but he can't blame Antol. He just wishes Antol had tried talking to him. Antol admits that he's not very good at communicating, and that he felt ashamed. Rob extends his hand and says that they should consider this a fresh start. He also thanks Antol for saving him from the dog earlier. This causes Rob's diplomacy stat to increase, although diplomacy won't be very useful in a dungeon. Oh right, they are starting to approach the dungeon entrance. Properly. Roba immediately kicks Antol Arce with spiders, causing Ant to scream out. As they progress, they see many dead spiders. So far, it seems like the monsters weren't too much of a problem for Kira and the others. But then, what kind of monster could have injured them so seriously? Whatever it is, it must be further ahead. Suddenly, they spot another path, and R decides to descend the stairs first, in case something dangerous and murderous awaits them below. Anton doesn't argue. As they descend, they check on the group's condition. Samira has lost another 30 points of, which did not bring him any satisfaction. He wondered if his day could get any worse, and upon checking his HP, he noticed that it was still decreasing, although it was also life, and some are unconscious, but everyone is still alive so far. However, they need to hurry. Suddenly, a red vine ensnares the leg of a girl. Rapi drags him quickly, as if he were an elevator, instantly taking him down. As they approach the source of the vine, Rob notices that it is similar to what brought him into this world. Before he can think further, the vine drags him into a portal. He wonders if that's his way to return home, but Entouré doesn't want Rob to leave. And what about our friends? He asks. Rob agrees that he is right, and that he has to save them. He has to save Kira. So, he draws his sword. But now that he's closer, this is nothing like the last time. He immediately cuts the vines with his sword, but more vines catch him by the legs. He cuts those too. But did Rob survive the Infinity Wolves, only to be devoured by a floating hole with mouth? Ortol yells at Rob to resist and throws a grenade, causing a large explosion. Rob is freed from the monster, which flees for now. Antol helps Rob to get up and asks if he is okay. Rob wonders where he would have ended up if Antol hadn't saved him. Antol explains that these things are called creeping shadows. Lethal, obviously, but he also feels like he should have recognized them sooner. They don't appear in the Identify spell until after they've attacked. Rab is worried because they haven't even made much progress in the dungeon, and everything is already getting out of control. Ontol is also afraid and has no idea how they are going to slost enemies, as long as he didn't look back. It was precisely the blessing Ornton needed. Without looking back, he told Malik to hold on tight, and, slowly regenerating, he confirmed that things could always get worse, but at least the regeneration meant he could survive for now. Furthermore, get out of this, and he has already accepted that he will probably meet his end there. But Rab retains a little hope. If he had been alone, perhaps he would have. It was supposed to be his end, but now that he has seen how Ontol can think quickly in critical situations and how knowledgeable he is, he feels like he can trust him. Based on his experience, Orntal says that he will try his best, which is already a lot for Rob, until they encounter a completely deranged maze. That will definitely make them lose valuable time, but at least Rob obtains a passive skill, leadership. He needed one. Mind stat by 25. In addition to him having demonstrated strong leadership in at least one tense situation, this skill will slightly increase his ability to lead and inspire others. Their adventure through the dungeon is filled with exciting moments, like when a clumsy Cyclops starts to chase after them. Orton tells Rob to keep running without looking back, but this situation makes Rob understand how Ontol must have felt when he was running away from him. Suddenly, Ontol starts slowing Rob down, which confuses him, especially since Ontol himself was the one who said not to stop. However, Ontol wants him to be careful of where they step, because there are traps everywhere, and the monster is still chasing them. Thanks to his elven agility, Ont manages to dodge all the traps and continues moving forward. Rob, lacking that same agility, realizes that it will be even harder for the Cyclops to avoid them, so he decides to continue advancing carefully. However, his recent level up had granted him many new abilities, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke, as if whoever was managing this monster manages to get quite close with its enormous feet. Orton encourages him, telling him that he's almost there. The surprising thing for both of them is that the monster hasn't triggered any traps yet. He's a fortunate Cyclops, but Rod has a plan. He uses his sword to activate a trap, instantly defeating the Cyclops instantly. Since this place is already sending monsters against them, perhaps they can use the labyrinth itself to their advantage. Also, they didn't gain experience, which is perfect for Rab. Still, the labyrinth is still a chaotic mess, and at this rate, they could be trapped forever. But Onal finds a mark that perhaps the others left to make their return easier. It could also be a trap, but they have no choice. Further ahead, they find another trap activated. Since there's no blood, they hope no one was caught in it. They then find another sign and conclude that the group must have returned the same way, just like in Dark Souls. This time, there's a bit of blood, so they're on the right track. Seeing this, Rob thinks that maybe he should play Dark Souls again. Orntal, using his agility, navigates through all the traps while assuring Rob that he will help him. Rob remains still until Orntal counts down. When he finally arrives, he tells him how close the monster got, so close that it almost trimmed the hairs in his nose. Upon hearing this, Orntal is surprised and realizes that humans have ears and noses. He finds humans very strange. Then he notices an arrow, which signifies place was extremely familiar with references from his world. Roab wondered if he'd have to be on the verge of death each time to obtain. They are back on the right path, but more monsters start to follow them. After losing sight of the monsters, they can't find any more markings and don't know if they may or may not be on the right path, but the monsters keep appearing. This time, they fight one, and Rab gives Ontol the opportunity to deliver the final blow. He insists that Ontol should get all the experience. Ontol is grateful because not many people let others finish off enemies. But Rab, considering everything, feels that Ontol is the one who should level up. Afterward, more monsters appear. Rapos defeats them, and his hand-to-hand combat level increases. At least it was just a class increase, not a full level increase, so it's not the same kind of rush. They decide to continue onward, and after detecting a trap on his own, the Intenor for Guy system grants Rab a point in perception. His poison resistance also increases from level 4 to level 5. Luckily, they have healing magic. Ortol tells Rob that he keeps getting hurt too much. Rob replies, "That's the plan. That's why he's there. Ortol will guide and he'll tank." Even though Ortol doesn't know what he'll be tanking, it's because he's a tank. Rob explains that, on Earth, tanking means getting in front and taking all the hits so their friends don't have to. Ortol is very happy to hear Rob call him his friend. For Rob, anyone who saves his life so many times automatically qualifies as a friend. Suddenly, his joy turns to worry as he sees a drop of red liquid fall from above. They are definitely not alone. Rob also notices new skills, but he was determined to do whatever it took to survive in this fantastical hellscape. His skills were sufficient to black substance, and anything involving a black substance is usually bad news. The monster is so strange that not even the system knows what it is, or what. It's their condition. The only thing the system can say is, help us. From the little they can see of the monster, the elves immediately flee toward the exit. The monster shoots arrows as it chases after them. After falling down the stairs, they sustain a lot of damage. In this new area, everything is quiet for now. Rap might have continued onward, but now they know what happened to the veteran explorers. Still, he is worried about the others. Then, a bestial chimera appears. A bestial, unnatural chimera, born from the mixture of monstrous mana with the mana of recently deceased animals. Its furious state is the most terrifying thing Orntal has ever seen, but that's not what scares Rob. What truly terrifies him is the dungeon's Spider Queen, the origin of the entire brood, its mother, his owner, her condition, hungry. But before Rob can completely panic, Orntal hears something, Alia complaining about the number of spiders. Rock instantly realizes that if Alia is nearby, the others must be as well. They've finally found them, but there are still many spiders left to defeat. Can Rob do it? Even I have my doubts, but comment if you want to see more, and let's see if we can get to 2,000 likes to give Rob a little push. See you in the next part. Yeah, keep him alive, but he still wondered what would happen if his HP reached 0. Would it be like a game over screen in a video game? However, he had a feeling that whoever had put him there hadn't included a reset button. This place was surely teeming with monstrous and diseased beasts, and everything that, what Rab wanted more than anything, was to return home. If that required strength, he was prepared to do whatever was necessary. Now, Rab regretted having left the Wascouts. Before learning how to make fire, he didn't have anything useful in his pockets, like a lighter, but upon checking them, he found something, a note. Upon reading it, it became clear that someone was cruelly toying with him. Meanwhile, in Ayatan, we see 2 elven warriors fighting against enormous ants, and indeed, there were far too many. There was no way they could clear the entire dungeon, so they decided to flee. They had thought it would be a dungeon for beginners, but he began to run. The speed boost he received was truly impressive. His main concern now was to warn the village of the impending. It turned out to be extremely dangerous. It was the first dungeon to appear so close to their village since the Great Purge. Mentor was still wondering why Kira. He thought they could handle it, but she explained that they were both destined to be frontline warriors and scouts. Of course, they were built. They were made to withstand these situations, but the problem was their current level. If only they had leveled up faster, maybe they would have stood a chance. Unfortunately, there was only one type of creature capable of accelerating level increases, and Kira claimed that those creatures were far worse than anything inside the dungeon. Luckily, they no longer inhabited those lands. Returning to Rab, we see him reading the fortune note, which only manages to anger him even further. His first priority is to find food and water, and the second is to gain more experience to increase his stats. The higher the level, the easier it will be to survive. He admitted he didn't want to do this, but he had to if he wanted to live. Everything was for survival. Then, he faces another challenge and does his best to survive because he needs more experience points. He trips and falls because of a stone, but still feels happy because he has found a beautiful pond. He wouldn't be thirsty again. He even tries to summon a portal, hoping it will appear from somewhere and take him home, maybe from under a rock, but no, he just finds a monster. He thought the XP in his stats would represent magic, but danger. Upon reaching the village gates, he shouted to raise the alarm, declaring that the humans had returned. His warning sowed. Attempting to launch a Kamehameha, he failed miserably. For now, he could only rely on his sword. Then he tries to move some leaves, but fails again. So he just starts plucking them manually. Although their water problem is solved, their hunger problem remains unsolved. Stepping on frogs no longer grants him much experience. He is far from being able to level up, and needs to find something bigger than frogs. Then he hears a sound. It's a bird, but it flies away quickly, taking his potential experience points with it. So hunting frogs is all he can do. After finishing off so many, he starts to feel guilty, but at least he gains another passive ability that makes him more proficient with sharp, long-bladed weapons, like the sword. It turns out that if you've never held a sword in your life, it only takes a few practice swings to advance from level 0 to level 1. However, his hunger, persisting, and searching for something bigger than frogs, Robiza stumbles upon something truly valuable, a holy grail, the most adorable one he has ever seen. He thinks that if he leaves it, to let his sword fly straight and pure, this furious and not at all adorable squirrel should provide him with enough experience. The squirrel attacks Rob, doing so fast that he can barely react. Rob manages to swat it away, emerging victorious and reaching level 3. He is excited to have leveled, which grants him more passive abilities like gathering and hunting. And there isn't just one frenzied squirrel, but many, even a level 4 one, which,